up, everybody? My name is Jeremy Schumacher. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm the Jer in Wellness with Jer. Thanks for stopping by and checking out the channel today. Today we're doing a review of Eddington. Spoiler-free review. First few minutes here. This movie was very good, and I hated watching it. It is incredibly well done. The actors are all phenomenal in it. It captures and revisits in too soon of time a formative piece of history. It captures what it felt like to live through that. It's pretty accurate in its depictions of, I would say, both the right and the left, in skewering them both, but also highlighting that one side is definitively worse than the other. And the messaging is really on point. Like, when I reflect critically about this film, there's nothing that I dislike about it. And watching it is a very unpleasant experience. I don't even know how to, I see people describing it as like a black comedy. I don't know that I agree with that. It's a drama for sure. You know, if this movie were set in a sci-fi world and not in the United States in 2020, I would have loved it. Right? Because the messaging is great. The cultural commentary is on point. The depiction of mental health is really good. Really good, meaning quite accurate. And it's so uncomfortable to watch. Where I think if we had that little bit of escapism, that little bit of a disconnect from reality, it'd be more fun. Maybe then it could be a black comedy. Because as it was, I just had like a terrible feeling watching the whole thing. And Joaquin Phoenix is in it, and Pedro Pascal is in it, and Emma Stone is in it, and all these people who I think are incredibly talented playing roles that they're well suited to playing. And I just didn't like it. I just hated the viewing experience. Great movie, phenomenally well done. Did not enjoy. And that's usually a movie that I love, right? Like, I'm the person I'm the Requiem for a Dream Sherpa. If I run into somebody who hasn't seen it, we will make time to watch it together because I think it is a film everyone needs to see. It is an unpleasant viewing experience, and it's very good and worth watching. A lot of the movies that I love, and I think they're very good are not fun. Lars and the Real Girl, Frank, Requiem for a Dream. You know, the only movies that I like love that are fun to watch are probably the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Big Lebowski, I guess. Yeah, I mean, this movie didn't have that fantastical piece. It didn't have... Yeah, I mean, Requiem for a Dream is grounded in reality as well, and I don't know. I haven't experienced drug culture. Maybe that film is extra unpleasant for people who have experienced or struggled with addiction. I think the worst story... This isn't a Requiem for a Dream review. I'll do that someday. But yes, so let's move on from the spoiler-free review and spoilers from here on out. The film is... and plot points. We'll sort of do a plot summary. I mean, the film opens with a shot of a sign saying a data center is going to be built, and then it closes with the data center that has been built. And I think that's really the thrust of, that's the main commentary in this film, is while all of the regular folks are chasing their own tails, fighting with each other, corporate interests and big business continue to ravage the planet, and through a global pandemic have come out far wealthier than when they came in. And that's, like COVID is a distraction in the film. It is the big bad. It's the villain that comes to town while the real villain is being built, you know? And it's so good. It's so accurate from that perspective in the idea that what this film is saying is while you regular people bicker and argue about bullshit, you're being screwed over by very wealthy interests who are taking your natural resources and costing you money and extracting wealth from your labor while you bicker and argue about how to grocery shop. And, the film does a really good job, I think, of encapsulating that feeling of what COVID was like. Everybody was afraid, you know. Um, and Joaquin Phoenix character is the sheriff who's on the right wing side of things, and he's introduced. I think every character in this film is sympathetic and deeply unlikable. That's another thing with the film that just like you're not rooting for anyone. Um, Joaquin Phoenix character comes in and has a mother-in-law who's living with them and gets stuck living with them because of the lockdown, who's conspiracy brain addled, and he's got a wife who is dealing with some trauma, and I would say is like schizophrenia coded, although that's never like overtly stated in the film. And so he has this home environment where he's the sane character. Like he's the straight man in his abode. And then he goes out in the real world and all the stress he's carrying with him, all the things that he can't control, he loses his goddamn mind over grocery shopping. And that's sort of what COVID felt like, at least for me. I don't think at least for me. I think for a lot of folks, I think there was this idea of like there's very simple, easy, understandable science at play here, and there are outside interests wanting to muddle it all up, and people who are deep into Fox News propaganda, people who are just internet brain dead, are falling victim to this wider narrative of there's complexities here that really need to be fleshed out, and thinking that people who spent 8 weeks in a police academy and have no formal education are educated enough to make a call on a global pandemic. And it was like maddening, right? It was maddening as somebody who has a strong research background, who understands how science works, who understands how research works. Like there were so many things from a scientific perspective that were amazing about COVID. Like the vaccine, arguably one of the greatest things in modern history that the world has ever come together to create. And because we're so brain dead politically, not an easy win. And so I was watching this like thing that should have been a layup. It's like watching Ben Simmons do a layup. He is wide open right under the basket, and he's 6'10", and he's going to pass instead of taking the shot. Like that's sort of what. Sorry to use a sports analogy. That's what it was like. And so he has all the Joaquin Phoenix, the sheriff, has all this stress at home, and he takes it out on the town. We see him take it out in all these other places, and he's so reactionary. And we can see, because we have the pulling behind the curtain, the not pulling behind the view behind the curtain, where his home life's so fucked up. We know why he's this way. And he's not the only character, but I thought the movie did a very good and very uncomfortable job. Again, it's just an uncomfortable viewing experience of how much we're on our phones. It's weird. It felt weird to watch a film where people are constantly on their phones, but that is real life, and capturing that time and place when we couldn't go places, when there weren't things going on, like everybody's just on their phones. And so we have parents, instead of interacting with their kids, they're on their phones. We have kids who, instead of interacting with each other, need to record everything. Um, yeah, it was just brutal. Pedro Pascal plays the mayor of the town, so we sort of have the sheriff and the mayor, right wing, left wing. Um, one of them good old boys who can't breathe through their mask, which was always bullshit. As somebody with two asthma sufferers in my house who were alive and having to mask during COVID because I'm married to an essential worker. I was also an essential worker. The can't breathe, you're taking away my freedoms crowd, right wing, Joaquin Phoenix character versus left wing, public policy, health and safety, Pedro Pascal. And the mayor is not likable either, right? He's not. We don't get to see him as a good character. He's meeting in a local business for a quote unquote town meeting, which is essential business, but like they're meeting at the bar, and Joaquin, the sheriff, calls him out for that. We know his kid goes to a social gathering. We know he is bought and paid for as a politician. And so while he's in this instance correctly vying for public health and safety and erring on the side of caution, masking and distancing was not a big ask for people. Struggling, behind the scenes with this data center that is going to bring in jobs, which is very electorally important, but very bad for the environment. So while vouching for health and safety, while erring on the side of caution, he is selling the future health and safety of his town and all its residents away. And so he's deeply unlikable. The teenagers are, I think, pretty accurate depictions. Like when you're not a teenager, teenagers are unlikable. And like I say that as somebody who coached teens, who coached, those college age players for a long time. With so much love in my heart for those kids that I've coached, I got along with 99% of them. And, as a coach, it's a very structured interaction you have with them. Like, I don't know, you don't hang out with teenagers unless you're a teenager because teenagers are kind of obnoxious. And all of the teenagers in this film were obnoxious and just the worst. And also, if there was any humor in the movie, if it was a black comedy, I think it was the teens who provided the humor because they were so cringy while being really earnest. We have the protesters who are, the criticism of the left and the social justice warrior crowd who are performative, who have read the books, who have apparently, the character I'm thinking of in the movie dated a black guy, but that are just so over the top to be devoid of reality. The funniest, again, I think the only humor in the movie was the character who, in order to hit on a girl, had been following her Instagram, saw a book she was holding, Googled it quick because he certainly hadn't read it, came up with some talking points, went and talked to her about it. She's not interested in him. She starts dating someone else, kicks off all the climax of the movie as it is presented to us. So he goes, brief sort of social justice rabbit hole to get this girl, which again I think is pretty accurate for not social justice movements in general, but for teenagers, right? Like their main developmental motivator is their peer group. And so yeah, like again, that was well done. It was accurate and uncomfortable. um So like they all suck and are performative and it's not fun. And they're constantly on their phones and they're constantly recording people. And like, so the movie set place in 2020. So COVID hits. And then also when George Floyd was murdered. And so the protests. And so what happens in this small town across the country from Minneapolis, which again, I feel like that was unrealistic. I don't know how many small towns shut down their main square. It almost seemed like there were too many people in the town all of a sudden protesting, which I'm not saying is impossible. I'm just saying like would have been like 15 people tops, not, a mob of people shutting down the town square. But whatever. I'm messing. I'm complaining mildly. Um so we sort of have like the teens, we have the mayor and the politicians and the skeezy politicians who are behind the mayor. And we have the sheriff. He has two people he's deputized because he can't keep his staffing quotas, and people are quitting because they've abused people or, excessive force or other things. So nobody's likable. The sheriffs who are deputized are not likable either. And then we sort of have this separate, we have the home life of the sheriff plot point of his wife, traumatized. And again, maybe she was dissociative and not schizophrenic, but like, I don't know. It was, as I was watching it, it was like, oh, she's going to have a mental break. And in that break with reality, she will be hallucinating things. And that's what her art is coming from. Again, I said schizophrenic coded. It wasn't ever sort of stated that way. And her mom, who's, just internet brain dead, conspiracy theory, 9/11 inside job. That's not how the towers would have fallen. What else was she on about? Just, all the things about the pandemic bullshit, like just conspiracy theorists. So she's unlikable. Also, hilariously, she was married to the sheriff before our current sheriff. And so he married the sheriff's daughter, but then is the sheriff now, but she hates him. So that mother-in-law, son-in-law dynamic, which is statistically speaking the most stressful relationship in all family dynamics, that's even done accurately. And while he is conspiratorial and gets right-wing fame for his stance on things, he doesn't like her. It's not like he's on board for like the cut of your jib. I don't know that that's a relevant idiom to use anymore. Sailing related. The conspiratorial stuff is funny too. And again, like that's the thing with this movie that is maddening, is it was so accurate in so many ways. I should just be gushing about how much I loved this movie, and it was such an uncomfortable watch that I can't. Because then this like cult leader comes into town. Mom's fault, right? The mother figure here, she's the one who found the conspiratorial figure, who's like a cult leader, but daughter's the one who runs away with the cult leader because, of course. And mom's like deeply skeptical of the cult leader. So she's conspiratorial in all of her thinking and all of her media consumption. She has zero critical thinking skills for. And then she gets together with this cult guy, and like all her red flags are going up, like alarm bells are going off. Like she is skeptical of the cult leader, even though she's the one who found him. And so that discrepancy, I think, again, between the movie was so good. The movie was so well done. The discrepancy between online media consumption, where we're just here, right? We're just on our phone staring at something, and like we wake up and we pull out our phones. We go to sleep with our phones on. We are here all the time, and it's just going straight into our eyeballs and into our brains. No critical thinking skills, pretty brain dead. And then like I would argue as a therapist, because our nervous system gets involved, because our bodies are responding to other people's bodies in our space, her nervous system is more on high alert around the cult leader than when she's scrolling. And like there's that anonymity that comes with the online discourse, especially around politics, especially in America, that like is just being astroturfed. Again, go touch grass, interact with real people, get off the internet. And I say that to like everybody who's on social media, but right, just as a news source or all of the things, like interact with some real people. It will help to keep you grounded. With that, the small town racism, again, I think was really accurate and accurately portrayed. One of the deputies is Black, and then the way the town butts up against native land, and the way that the town, especially the town officials, are very dismissive of the native land and the natives' claims to things. And so we have these two police forces that are in opposition, because we have Eddington, the police forces, sheriff and deputies, and then we have I think it was a reservation police force as well. And so these two things were like butting up against each other, and there was a tension throughout all that certainly helped to move the plot along at the end of the movie. And we're just sort of watching everybody deteriorate, and it's very sad, sheriff deteriorates, mayor deteriorates, all the kids in the town deteriorate. Mom who's obsessively online deteriorates. Traumatized, mental health issue wife deteriorates. The mayor's wife is just gone. I've said this recently in a video, like I really don't like the dead wife trope. She wasn't dead, she just ran off, and that is never responded to. Um, Supposedly, and I only know this from checking out the Wikipedia page quickly before recording, there's going to be a sequel, which I don't know what it'll be about. The movie got weird. I don't want to say like unrealistic, but maybe a little heavy-handed. At the end of the film, as Phoenix, the sheriff character, loses his mind, he just starts killing people and then covering it up. And then he tries to blame one of his deputies, the black one, of course. He's going to pin it on them. And then the native police force, the indigenous police officer who's sort of been tracking things, sees through sheriff's lies and knows the sheriff did it. Sheriff has to rush this. And then there's like a terrorist attack is how it's talked about, quote unquote, in the town. It is hinted at. I don't know that it's ever fully revealed. The way that I read it, and I think the correct reading on the film, is the data center sent in like a false flag operation. But again, in the context of the movie where there's so many conspiracies flying around, like I don't think it was particularly clear that that's what happened. And or you're reading it in that skeptical lens, or at least I was, somebody who had to sift through all the bullshit that people were saying about COVID. I was working in higher ed when that hit. My wife was a teacher. We had a kid during that time. So like all the nonsense that people said and are still saying because they're invested in what they thought 5 years ago, even though there's a ton of research and data that makes a lot of what the conspiratorial side of things was trying to say 5 years ago just totally factually wrong. It was wrong then, but we didn't have a ton of data on it, and it's definitely wrong now because we have more data, because that's how science works. So yeah, I mean anyway, sheriff loses his mind, and then we have like this strike force come in that like tries to kill him, and then he like gets into the town's gun shop and comes out. It gets a little weird. There's some big over the top firefights. Again, the character who's the most humorous is the kid who's living on Instagram, hits on a girl because of the book she read, changes his entire personality pursuing this girl, doesn't get the girl, but he does save the sheriff at the end of the movie, and then he becomes a right-wing hero, his own podcast, his own media tour. It's like very Kyle Rittenhouse, fuck that guy storyline, and like it's comical in the movie. And again, the fact that like that's what happened in real life is very depressing. It's very hard to do satire anymore because it's just so far beyond the pale in real life with open corruption and idiocracy. So anyway, the sheriff gets stabbed in the head like twice, survives, but is not in any sort of capacity to do anything. He becomes wheelchair bound, doesn't seem like he's able to communicate anymore, and then is still elected mayor because he killed the other mayor. Apparently the crimes were not seen all the way through. And so then he's rolled out at the opening of the data center. And that's the movie. And like it sucks so hard. It is hard for me to say everything about this movie was well done, and I agree with the things it was saying, and it wasn't fun. Oh, the sheriff's wife, who's what used to be addled, I don't know what we say now, who's unwell, runs off with like the cult leader. And even that was well done. Even that, as somebody who works with religious trauma, is like, right, like cult leaders are charismatic, they're engaging, they often use a lot of correct verbiage their lingo around trauma and harm, and a lot of the stuff is accurate. So he sort of swoops in and is like, I was molested as a kid. I was sold, my dad sold me and 10 other kids to these rich investors, and they molested us, they raped us, and then they hunted us for sport. And you're like, well, that didn't fucking happen. Um, Again, even the conspiratorial mother is like, nah, that is too far fetched. And then, yeah, the wife runs off. She was not having any physical contact with her husband, the sheriff, and then we see that she's pregnant by the cult leader. Um, so again, like even that's accurate. Even somebody who has a lot of trauma and is going to have a lot of triggers and has a lot of guards up, like predators see those people and are attracted to them and can actually like soothe their systems. It's unhealthy. It's not well done. It's not sustainable. But like people do let their guard down around them because they can say and do the right things temporarily for their own benefit eventually, and it becomes abusive. But that's how they coerce and manipulate people. And so even the cult leader in the show was really well done. And it was just, it wasn't, there's no joy in it, is what happened. And like you finish watching it, and then the credits roll on just, here's the town lit up sort of dimly in the background, and then this big bright data center that's just sucking up all the energy is in the foreground, and you're like, yeah, that sucks. It's three billionaires who, you know, tripled their wealth over the course of the pandemic. Like, yeah, fuck those guys. Um, and like if that's the take home message, again, like I wholeheartedly agree. And it wasn't fun to watch. It was a unpleasant watch. Not even like deeply uncomfortable, because I think I can deal with deeply uncomfortable. Again, I highlighted Requiem for a Dream at the beginning of this video. Like, I know Requiem for a Dream is deeply uncomfortable. If you know that film, you know how it ends, and that's weird to sit through with another human. Um, I do think the most horrific storyline. Again, I'm not gonna. What I want to say about Requiem for a Dream that I keep interrupting. I haven't watched it in a while. I haven't run into many people recently who haven't seen it. Um, the addiction storyline, the mom in Requiem for a Dream who gets addicted to uppers and also television, is maybe the most horrific because I think it's the most accessible. Where heroin addiction is also horrific, and also not that many people um, get pulled into it compared to how many people get addicted to their screens. And I'm using addicted culturally there, not how I as a therapist can actually diagnose an addiction. Um, but yeah, that's beside the point. The film did a really good job of how stupid people are on the right and the left. Stupidity on the left is performative, um, and cringy. Stupidity on the right gets people killed. And so those are very different things. The harm that is done, whether you're eye rolling or you're killing over 1 million people, again, I don't see those as comparable. They're both bad, and like the scaling is very different. Um, and like fuck COVID deniers, right? Like I will just wrap this video up very controversial. It shouldn't be controversial. Over 1 million people died, you dumbasses. Uh, but the people who refuse to get vaccinated, the people who are skeptical about the vaccine, just like are morons. There's a very, 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 very small subset of people who can't get the vaccine for various health reasons, and that's true for most vaccines everywhere, because humanity is not 100% one way all the time, and biology is highly variable. And like, yeah, I don't know. I got people with asthma in my family. Like the fact that we couldn't have eradicated this earlier in the process by masking, distancing, and then getting vaccinated to any sort of important cutoff level is, again, so dumb. So dumb. And again, I mean the selfishness throughout the film and the screen addiction throughout the film, the way that people are on phones, like I don't know what it was about how they shot it, or if it was just like because it was right wing conspiracy bullshit all the time up on the phones, but ugh, ugh. And like one of the things that people struggle with through it is just a misunderstanding of how to use statistics and also how to use statistics, but even just a basic knowledge of what statistics are and how they work in the first place, let alone how to apply them. It's like, yeah, I don't know. That's why you don't get concussion addled athletes or podcasters or reality TV shows in charge of stuff, I would say. I forget what country it was, but there's some country that is adding a requirement for media, like content creation, like this or social media, that if you want to talk on a topic that requires certain expertise, you actually have to be an expert. And like, I think that's lovely. I don't know how they're going to enforce it because I'm also anti um, too much internet identification, pro privacy, and yeah, maybe we shouldn't have unlicensed or people whose license were lost because of how bad they were at their jobs. People talking about heavy hitting shit that could impact a mass population. But the COVID stuff was there. The screen stuff I think was like subtle, but like to me was bright flashing lights. Like on my coffee table in my office, I have a Pink Floyd book, I have Rimo the Ancient Mariner, and I have Marshall McLuhan's The Medium is the Massage. And if you've never read that book, it's from the 1960s. It's not quite, I'm oversimplifying. It's about how TV was going to ruin everything. And like that obviously didn't happen. And I don't think I'm biased because of how much I like the book. I don't think that was the point of the book. It wasn't a reactionary tract in the sense of this is going to ruin everything. It was highlighting that how we receive messaging, the medium by which we receive a message. The book title was supposed to be "The Medium is the Message." So television as the new medium was going to change things because it changes the way that we interact with whatever message is coming through that medium. There was a typo on the printer, and Marshall McLuhan thought it was very funny and sort of accurate that the medium massages the meaning that we take away from any particular message, and so he let that stand. But anyway, the point of the book and why I like the book and why I like this movie, I think got screened so right was because like, yes, how we are interacting with the way in which we interact with messaging does change how we respond to it. The vitriol and the stupid takes and the bullshit we see online is generally different than what we get from interacting with real people, which I think is important, which is why I think we need to bring back like public shaming, especially online. Downvote people, bigots, and all those idiots need to understand that splitting hairs between rape and sexual abuse, or a 15-year-old who's assaulted by a pedophile, or an 8-year-old who's assaulted by a pedophile, like saying rape is wrong but sexual abuse is okay, is like not an okay thing to say publicly. And that's a bad thing to believe, let alone feel so confident to say out loud. And so, yeah, we need to bring some of that back, but some of that is, again, the anonymity that comes with the internet. And so those are still things that I think, unfortunately, since COVID, it has gotten worse, that people are more prone to say those things in real life. And so both online and in real life, we need to call that shit out. I don't know where I was going with this. Just soapboxing at this point. But it was an upsetting movie that was done really well, I guess is what I'll say. Um, it's hard for me to even say I think you should watch it. I think if you're like a film nerd, you should watch it. This is really good. It's really well done. A little over the top, and there was a firefight moment, but like very well done. And like, I'm not a stan for Ari Aster, the director. I take some issue. I did a review of Midsummer, which is great as somebody who spent time in pagan circles, and if I was forced to probably identify some way, would still say pagan to some degree. No, like I'm comfortable with that. And it's a lovely movie for that. Really good horror film. But the opening of Midsummer is like a message, a clear message to his ex that he wishes her family would kill themselves. And then the rest of the movie is like torture porn for the character that is the stand-in for his ex. So like, he doesn't get a pass in my book. Fuck that guy for using his platform that way. And I don't know. Midsummer's really good. I've not seen Hereditary, but it's supposed to be very good. I also didn't watch Beau Was Afraid because I don't know, it's like 4.5 hours long or something. Um, Not supposed to be as good. Again, I think sometimes directors and media people start liking the smell of their own farts too much and lose track of how to make good art because they get pretentious. Um, and Eddington seems like a not that. Eddington was really well done. Again, like to give credit where it is due, it seems like a director at the full sort of prowess of the ability to not just work with the subject material, but actors. Joaquin Phoenix has a particular way he likes to do things. And he's very good. So, like, sure, he gets to do that. So, working with some high profile actors, this is Pedro Pascal at the height of Pedro Pascal's and everything. Um, Emma Stone, very good, and like in a supporting role here. So, yeah, I'm not somebody who's gonna say everything Ari Aster has done has been phenomenal, but I'm gonna say, like, from a filmmaking perspective, this seemed very well done. And it's weird because some of the online criticism was like it's boring or like it's not about anything. I think some people are like the whataboutism. Like, it's not whataboutism. He's very derogatory to the right and he's a little eye roll to the left. But like, I think the movie does a good job of saying like these two things are not equivalent. They're both flawed, but the flaws scale very differently. All that is to say, it was a movie that was done very well, and it's a very unpleasant watch. And if somebody were to advertise the movie that way, I'm the person who would go watch it because generally speaking, I like that stuff. I like a movie that makes you feel bad. And it wasn't this one. I don't know if it's too soon or just because we lived through it or what, but yeah. So if you're a sicko and you love cinema, I guess watch it. If you're a fan of any of those actors, they're phenomenal in it. Watch it. Otherwise, thanks for watching this video. I saved you the uncomfortability of watching that film by explaining what it's about. You're welcome. Thank you for tuning in. I have a bunch of stuff recorded, some music stuff recorded. I have some other stuff recorded. I'm not like oddly ahead on some stuff, but drop down in the comments. Now is the time where I can actually work ahead a little bit and catch up on some of the old recommendations people have given me. So drop down in the comments. Let me know what else you would like me to talk about for mental health, for how mental health is portrayed in media. From that perspective alone, 10 out of 10 for Eddington. Yeah, drop down in the comments. Let me know, like, subscribe, all those YouTube algorithm-y things help people find me, which is very cool. And if there's another takeaway from this film is that we as a community need to take care of each other. So take care of yourself, take care of somebody else. Peace.